Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and this is a podcast primarily about knitting, though we do get up to other fiber-related topics from time to time. I am coming to you from Henderson, Nevada, which is a small suburb outside of Las Vegas, Nevada in the United States. This is where I am from and where I live with my husband Brandon, our 3.5-year-old son Angus, our 4.5-month-old son Ronan, and our big fat house cat Oscar. If you're a returning viewer and subscriber to the podcast, thank you so much for coming back time and time again every time I upload something new here on the Wool Needles Hands, a fiber journey channel. And if you are a new viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for checking us out. I hope there is something here that you'll love, and welcome. It's always nice to have new faces and to hear from new people that have just found this corner of YouTube. It means so much to me that you're here, so thank you very much and enjoy. Also, if at any point during the video you like what you see here, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. It really does a lot for the channel. It lets YouTube know that there is something of value here, and it helps the channel to grow, and I truly appreciate it. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Not only does the Wool Needles Hands Fiber Journey channel have this knitting podcast, there is a series of vlogs and tips from the dyeing studio that I like to share from my hand-dyed yarn studio here at my home. I upload every week, and I have a podcast upload every 2 weeks. If you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the little bell icon. That lets you know anytime something new gets uploaded on the channel. It's kind of like a notifications button. If you click it, it turns notifications on, so you can be notified anytime something new pops up here. If you choose not to click it, that's fine. You'll still see my videos in your feed. You just won't be notified as soon as they pop up. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so via email. The email for the podcast is woolneedleshands@gmail.com. There is also a P.O. box address for the podcast now. You can find that in the About section on the homepage of this channel. You can also get in touch with me via Ravelry. My Ravelry handle is @woolneedleshands, and you can find me on Instagram @woolneedleshands as well. There's also a Pinterest page for the podcast now. It is a little bit more of a visual way of referencing the various different things mentioned here on the channel, so definitely check that out. You can find it by going to Pinterest and searching Wool Needles Hands in the search tab. I want to shout out to Brittany, who is Wild Knit Mama. She is going to be the Pinterest moderator for the show now, so thank you so much, Brittany. Definitely check her out. She has a new blog called Wild Knit Mama. I'll link to it down below. And she also is just starting a knitting podcast, which I'll link to down below as well. And she has a really beautiful Instagram feed. So definitely don't forget to check out Brittany's Instagram and blog. Thank you so much, Brittany, for being our Pinterest moderator. You can also find me via my hand-dyed yarn company, which is Fiber for the People. You can find Fiber for the People on Instagram at fiber.for.the.people. And you can also find the online shop at fiberforthepeople.com. There will be a shop update for Fiber for the People this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, so don't forget to check that out. In the meantime, head over to the website so you can sign up for the newsletter and stay up to date on all things Fiber for the People and any of the new yarn goodies that are coming to the shop. Also, don't forget, if you are a first-time viewer of the podcast, or maybe just a first-time user of this coupon code, when you shop at Fiber for the People, use the code WNHLOVE to receive 10% off your order. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the yarn sexies coming to the shop update this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Lots of pretty stuff coming. Don't forget to mark your calendars, and I hope to see you guys at the shop update on Saturday. There's a knit along going on over here at the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast, and one upcoming, which I'm excited to talk a little bit more about today. I've talked quite a lot about both of these podcasts in previous episodes, so I'm going to try and keep it brief today, but I'm excited, as always, about the knit alongs that we have going on here at the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. First, we are in the midst of the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats Knit Along 2018. This is pretty much where we are knitting a new hat every month. And like I've said before, when I say we, take it with a grain of salt. Not all of us are knitting a new hat every single month, but there is hat knitting going on every month of the year here at the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. You can pick or choose the months that you would like to knit a hat, or you can knit all 12 months worth of hats. It's completely up to you, and you can jump into this knit along whenever you would like. It is a year-long knit along, so take advantage if you like knitting hats. If you are interested in participating in this knit along, head over to Ravelry, go to the groups tab, search Wool Needles Hands a Knitting Podcast. You can definitely head over there for more information on both of these knit alongs. I'm just going to go over it briefly here and brush the surface just to remind people that they're going on right now. We're getting a jump on our gift knitting, so all the hats that are being knit for the month of August are hats that are going to be given as gifts. Not necessarily for the holidays, but for any particular reason, and it doesn't have to be a gift that's given in 2018. I feel like I should specify that too. If you know somebody has a birthday coming up in the spring and you'd like to knit something for them now, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be a gift given this year. It just has to be knit as a gift for this particular month. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the awesome finished objects that are already in the finished object thread over on Ravelry for the August month of the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats Cal 2018. So definitely, if you're interested, head over to the Ravelry page, learn some more, get inspired, get involved in the chatter thread. It's a lot of fun, and we will look forward to seeing your knit hats. All right, the next knit along that we have going on over here at the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast is the Wool Needles Hands Garland Along 2018. We are going to be starting in September, the 1st of September, we are going to start knitting garlands or crocheting garlands. It's a make along more than it is a knit along because you can crochet or knit, but we are going to start making garlands, and they don't have to be holiday garlands. They can be for any particular purpose. Maybe you're decorating a baby shower, maybe you're decorating a baby room, which is the garland that I'm going to be making is going to be going into the baby room of my new niece coming in November, but it can be for whatever reason that you would like to knit or crochet a garland. In the meantime though, head over to the Ravelry group, get involved in the chatter threads, share some inspiration on various different knit or crochet garlands you may have seen that you think would be fun to work on. Definitely get that chatter thread going so that we can provide lots of inspiration to everybody. You know, it came really close to being a hot tea kind of day, and it has nothing to do with it being cool outside because it's warm outside. Whether it's cloudy or rainy, it's still going to be warm outside. It's August in the desert, but it was really cloudy earlier, and we actually had a real big downpour very briefly, which is, you know, monsoons are amazing for that because you could literally be having a downpour on your home and your neighbor's house is bright and sunny. It's kind of what it was like. It was really cool. It was all of a sudden it just got really dark, and the house started darkening, and it just kind of gave you that real cozy feeling, almost like if you had stepped outside you could imagine it being cool, which it wasn't. It was really muggy and warm, and then it started to rain. It was so cool, but when I went outside to check it out, I'm telling you, it was cloudy and dark and rainy on my house, and I looked down the road and it's like sunny skies and dry. It's just like, you know, a big hygge dome like went over my house and made it nice and cozy for about 25-30 minutes, and then it drifted away and became sunny and warm again. So it was really, really close to being a hot tea kind of day, but no such luck. So I have iced tea again today, but I have a different kind of tea, same brand as last episode, but a different variety of that brand. So I am drinking Clipper tea again. You guys, I picked up some Clipper tea to include in orders that go out for Fiber for the People, and I fell in love. That first glass that I had on the last episode of the podcast was absolutely delicious. And I went on Amazon and I found some more Clipper tea, and they have such a huge variety of flavors and they all sound amazing. And I found this particular flavor, which is absolutely wonderful. I love it because it's tart and fruity. It's definitely, it's an herbal tea. It's not a black tea, so it doesn't have any bitterness. It's perfect for summer and it's perfect as iced tea. It is Clipper, and it is a bag of our organic red fruits and aronia berry infusion. Oh, and this is what the little package looks like. You guys, I'm a sucker for their packaging. I think that's like my favorite part of the whole thing. Like, their packaging is so beautiful. It tells you all about it on the back. Yeah, it's absolutely delicious. So it comes with, it says, a refreshing and delicious and deeply fruity infusion, naturally caffeine free. It says, find Clipper in all good retailers. Have you tried our green and specialty teas or our range of fruit and herbal infusions? You can find them at clipper-teas.com. Not a sponsor, just really like the tea. It's delicious. And the reason why I recommend checking it out on Amazon is because this is a UK brand and it's really difficult to find it here in the States. If you don't go through something like Amazon, or maybe go to Home Goods. If you are here in the States, Home Goods typically carries really cool UK brands of tea, and I recently found a bunch of Clipper over at Home Goods, but you can get the really, really good flavors that you can't get even here at Home Goods on Amazon. I think this box of Clipper tea, just this one box, which is a regular size box of tea, was $13 just because you can't find it here. But it's delicious. I would recommend paying the $13 because it makes really great tea. And I'm thinking about it now. I don't know if you can tell, but there's 3 tea bags back there. And if you do the math on, you know, how much that glass of tea is costing me, it's okay though. It's worth it. It's delicious. I love it. But yeah, Clipper tea, if you haven't checked them out, check out the berry tart varieties for iced tea because they're absolutely delicious. The biggest yarn bomb installation on a building is in Folkestone, Kent in the United Kingdom. The Pearl Queens, a creative group in Folkestone who are behind lots of different charitable yarn bombing events, are brightening up the streets of Folkestone and have been doing it for several years. Their latest work is above a cute little shop on Rendezvous Street in Folkestone, and it's actually believed to be the largest of its kind in the entire country. In addition to 5 workshops held in the town, the Creative Foundation and the Roger DeHaan Charitable Foundation, other people were sending things from America, Australia, Germany, and France. The entire installation took over 1,000 hours and they'd been working on it since February. Here is a quick look at the installation by the Pearl Queens and other people from around the world in Folkestone, Kent, United Kingdom. Was sent to me by Laura Brender. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing this with me. I really, really appreciate it. If you would like to get involved in the knitting and the news segment here on the podcast, please send me any news article that you think is fiber related. It doesn't have to be knitting, just anything fiber related that you think would be interesting to share here on the podcast. I'll do my due diligence and research it further, and if you'd like, I can share your name here as well as a contributor to the podcast. It is always great to collaborate with you, the viewer, when it comes to curating various content for the podcast, so thank you so much in advance for helping me out with this. I have 3 works in progress to share with you guys today because these are the only 3 works in progress that I have been actively working on since the last time we've spoken, actually since the last several episodes of the podcast, because as you may know, I am on a no cast on diet right now with the exception of one item that I have here today. I talked a little bit about it on the last episode. I'm probably going to chat a little bit more about it today, but I only have these 3 projects that I'm working on now, and that's not because I don't have others. It's just because these are the ones that I am working on until they are finished, and then I'm cycling in others that I have kind of, you know, in the wings, I guess you could say. So this is what I'm going on right now. I haven't worked a whole lot on either of these because I've been kind of giving each of them some attention since the last episode of the podcast, but I'm going to share with you what I have. So like I said earlier, I have finished the first of my Hermiones Everyday Socks. I am on the second sock now. This is where I am with that at the moment. These are being knit in Fiber for the People yarn. This This is the peach pit colorway. This is the gilded base. There's some gold stellina in there. And this is the Movin' On Up colorway. And you guys, I love them together. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. I have spoken a lot about these socks in the last couple of episodes, so I'm going to keep this brief, but I am getting some progress going on this. I have a really good feeling that these will be done on the next episode of the podcast, just because I want to hammer them out, get them finished, because I have other things that I need to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and get these done. And okay, so a couple of things about these socks before I move on to the next project. The first sock that I finished, it's beautiful, it's lovely, but it's just a little tight. And I don't know if maybe I should have knit it longer, but I felt like I knit it the length that I always knit my socks, and I don't even think it's the length that was bothering me as much as it is just the narrowness of the foot itself. And so I just kind of think that a 64 stitch sock is really not, I must have large feet or wide. I mean, I have a size 8 foot and my feet aren't really that wide. I don't consider my feet to be wide, but for whatever reason, they were a little snug on me and I blocked them pretty vigorously, whatever. And that's okay. You know, I have a few different pairs of knit socks and I have others on the needles that are a little bit larger than this. Typically I like to go for a 72 stitch sock. I know that that seems like a lot and it's not gonna fit me like a sock you would wear with a pair of shoes. I like my knit socks to fit more like boot socks. Typically because I don't wear them with shoes, I like to just wear them around the house. Yeah, so that's kind of my go-to when it comes to socks, knit socks. I don't like them to fit too tight. I think I've done 68 stitches before and that's really good as well. But anyway, my first was a little bit small, a little bit out of my comfort zone. I don't know, and that's okay. It's really okay. I am planning on giving them as a gift. So I'm gonna hang on to them, and when Christmas time rolls around, I have somebody in mind that I can gift these to. So that's totally fine. But it has got me thinking, what could I do? Because I really love the pattern, I love the texture, and I would like it to fit more like kind of a cozy slipper sock or like a boot sock. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit another pair of Hermiones Everyday Socks down the road once I've at least casted off all of the socks that I have. I have 2 more pairs of socks on the needles right now. Once I knock those out, I'll allow myself to cast on another pair of socks, and I think I'm going to do it in a DK weight yarn. I love DK weight socks. And so I think that's kind of my plan. So moving forward with Hermiones Everyday Socks, these are going to be a gift, and then I will cast on another pair of Hermiones Everyday Socks and give them a shot as DK weight socks. If I need to make some adjustments to the pattern, meaning like the stitch count, do some math there, I'll work that out. But I think it would be really beautiful in a DK weight sock. But I actually think with a 64 stitch cast on in a DK weight yarn, but I keep the needle size relatively low, considering the weight of the yarn, I think that they might make a nice, snug, you know, tight knit sock. So we'll see. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? DK weight Hermiones Everyday Socks? Let me know. On the last episode of the podcast, I shared with you guys two skeins of yarn that I was going to be using to cast on my August portion of the Wool Needles Hands Year of Hats Knit Along. Now, again, like I'm not casting anything new on. I'm on a no cast on diet, but I felt like I needed to participate in my knit along, and the same is going to go when the garland along comes up because I'm going to be casting on or chaining on to something there. Because it's for the sake of being part of the community and part of the knit along. So that's why I'm casting on what I have here today. So, let's not get crazy. But last time I was talking to you about the yarn that I was going to be using for this particular cast on. Okay. So here's the yarn. Look at that green patch right there. Holding this with this yarn, I'm going to unravel a little bit of it so I can kind of imagine this together. How do you even unless I knit a swatch, which I don't have time to do that right this moment. Let's see if this even, okay, wait for it. Yeah, I don't think this is working at all. I don't even think that you can tell what I'm talking about. Hold on. All right, bear with me here. Do you see that? Can you even tell? If I had a third hand coming right out of my forehead, that would make this really easy. I caked up the 2 yarns together. So there was a fuzzy fiber and then there was a single ply, beautiful variegated color fiber for the people yarn. And I wanted to put them together to kind of create a nice, beautiful, fuzzy, variegated, muted yarn, I guess you could say, for knitting my hat for the August portion of the knit along. So I did that. I kind of went against common, rules that tell you don't, cake yarns together, and I just went ahead and caked them together because it's a lot more easy to just do it that way than to have two different balls of yarn jangling around in your project bag. At least that's my opinion. So I just went ahead and bit the bullet and I did it. And this is what I came up with. This is what they look like together, and you guys, I am so happy about the way this looks. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's really exactly what I imagined it to look like when I was thinking about winding them together. So I'm really, really excited about this. It almost has, and I mentioned this on Instagram, so if you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen this, but I feel like looking at this, because of the colors in this yarn, I mean, you're getting that really pretty, girly purple, some teal going on in there. Lots of like real pastel rainbow colors happening. And then you get this fuzzy, like I said before, this is a mystery skein. I'm not exactly sure what that fiber content is, but you get that fuzzy fiber content. I mean, doesn't that just like scream unicorn farts? Like, if unicorn farts were a yarn, I feel like that's what this would be. I don't ever use the term unicorn farts. I feel like that's something you hear, a lot, in the social medias, I guess. I guess this is the first time I ever felt like it was an appropriate reference. So yeah, that's kind of what this looks like, but that's the last time I'm going to refer to this as unicorn farts. It's just beautiful, in my opinion. It's absolutely beautiful. It's soft, and I do have part of my hat actually worked up here, so you're going to get to see it in progress, and you guys, it doesn't disappoint. It's really, really very beautiful. I had mentioned in the last episode of the podcast that I was going to do the Constellate Hat by Hunter Hammerson. I decided against it, and I'm going to tell you why. But first, I'm going to share with you what I do have, so you can so I can just get a move on and put the goods in front of the camera, right? So here it is. This is what I have so far of my August hat. Now, this is going to be a gift for somebody special who watches the podcast, so I'm not going to name any names, but you guys, I love it. I mean, just for a minute, let's just look at this yarn. Like, how beautiful is that? Look at the halo that it has now that we've kind of paired it with that really beautiful fluffy yarn. Oh, you guys, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I am loving this so much. I mean, just the colors together. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the pattern that I have going on here, what happened is I started knitting the Constellate Hat. So what you're seeing here is the beginning of the Constellate Hat. It's a 3x1 ribbing that happens right here. Okay, a few things about that. The pattern calls for a knit 3 and purl 1 through the back loop rib. That's all well and good. That's fine. I have a real problem with purling through the back loop. Now, if I'm going to take after any great knitter when it comes to like my opinions about knitting, it's going to be Elizabeth Zimmerman and her opinion on purling. I don't like purling, really. I mean, I can do purling if the only thing that I'm doing is purling, because you can get into the rhythm of purling, but generally I don't really like it. It's just such a contrasting movement of your hands compared to the knit stitch, and especially the way that I'm doing it. And I tend to, when I knit, I flick, I guess you could say. I kind of flick the yarn over the needle. I don't throw the yarn. So it's easier in that sense. It's not as much of a drastic change in movement. So there's that. But I'm not a big fan of purling to begin with. And then when you're purling through the back loop, you're throwing in that, little additional nuance to purling. It's just frustrating. And I know it makes for a really beautiful motif. In my previous hat that I knit, the Squash Blossom hat, there's purling through there is a purling through the back loop and knitting through the back loop, and it creates a really pretty rib, I guess you could say. It's a real pretty texture that's provided by that, working a stitch through the back loop. But for whatever reason, that like knitting 3 and then purling 1 through the back loop, it was just slowing it down and making it just kind of drag. And I felt like it was rather unnecessary for what I was going for with the pattern, the Constellate Hat, as it was at that moment. So the pattern's written for, it's pretty much a reversible hat, so you could wear it inside out, it really doesn't matter. And then the brim, if you're knitting the full length of the brim in the pattern, you can fold it over and you have a reversible, opposite side of the brim. I wasn't going to be knitting a full-length brim anyway. I wanted it to be just a normal 2-inch brim because the person who I'm knitting this for probably wouldn't be folding the brim. So I didn't care so much about it being reversible, which I know is why that purl stitch was being done through the back loop, is it provides a little bit more of a standout rib when you reverse it. It just kind of looks more, I don't know, reversible. So I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. I feel like I'm maybe making this sound confusing. So this is the wrong side of the fabric, but because it's reversible, it really, I guess, doesn't matter. So I don't know if you can tell, the yarn might be hard to see here, but up here you'll see for about like maybe 1/4 of an inch or so, the ribbing is tighter right here. And I'm hoping, I'm going to use my pen here to point this out to you. Here, you might be able to see that the ribbing looks tighter. It's just a tighter rib, and then it loosens up as it goes down. And that's because I started purling through the back loop, which gives you a really nice tight ridge. And then I decided like I don't want to do that anymore because it really doesn't look any different if I just purl normal on this side at least. And you'll notice that when I stopped purling through the back loop and just started purling normal, it kind of loosens up that ridge a little bit. That's what happens. And it's really not very noticeable, even if I did intend to make the full-size brim and have this be reversible. For the extra step that you're taking to make it a purl through the back loop, I just didn't think it was worth it. So I stopped doing it, and it was just like I started speeding through the ribbing. It was so much faster and so much more enjoyable in that regard. And again, you can't really notice the difference. You can't notice any difference if you look at this side. So this is just the basic ribbing. You can't tell where I started doing a regular purl and where I ended purling through the back loop here at all. And or if you can, then you have trained eyes that I don't have. But you really can't tell. You can tell on this side because, like I said, the purls are tighter where I was purling through the back loop, but it's really, you can't even tell on this side. So that's why I kind of just changed midstream, I guess you could say, and started purling regular. That was the first issue I had with the hat. Now, I had heard from a few people after episode 29 went up. I had heard that the Constellate hat is beautiful. It's a really nice pattern, but it's really time consuming. The stitch isn't really difficult. It just takes a lot of time. As soon as that was mentioned to me, it caused me to kind of step back and think, okay, do I want to tackle a project right now that's time consuming? And so, yeah, like I didn't really want to add, because I'm already not casting on new projects at the moment. I want to, keep that to a minimum. I didn't want to cast onto something that was going to be time consuming and may end up being something that takes a long time and just sits there. I really want to avoid that at all costs. And so that was something I considered. Now, that didn't keep me from attempting the Constellate hat. It just caused me to, it gave me a moment of pause to consider that. Okay, so then that takes us to the regular portion of the hat where you start working the Constellate stitch pattern. I made it about, I want to say 1.5 inches into the hat before I realized that I no longer wanted any part of that stitch pattern. And I have to preface this by telling you, the stitch pattern is beautiful. The hat that's produced by the stitch pattern is beautiful. It is a beautiful stitch pattern. It's a beautiful hat pattern. Absolutely. I don't see myself knitting this pattern in the future for several reasons, and I'm not going to share all of them here because that would involve giving away portions of the pattern, and you have to kind of make that determination on your own. But the stitch pattern was incredibly tedious. It took a long time. You have to really stop, your momentum and look at your stitches to carry out a particular element in the stitch pattern before you can continue on, and that continuation doesn't last very long before you get to another speed bump where you have to stop and look at your stitches and then carry on. If you've done this before, you may know what I'm talking about, and I might be like a little brutally honest about it here, and I don't mean that. It's just that I really appreciate a pattern that can give you a really beautiful stitch and also be easy. When I say easy, I don't mean easy, but be rhythmic. I think the word I'm looking for is rhythmic. I appreciate a beautiful stitch pattern that's rhythmic. And I know that there are beautiful stitch patterns, and if you want the really intricate details, you kind of have to sacrifice some of that rhythm. I get that. But sometimes I don't want to sacrifice that rhythm. And then, of course, that somebody could tell me, well, then don't knit this pattern. Absolutely. That's, I think, my point here, is that I know what the pattern is like. I understand what you have to do to achieve that stitch pattern, and I'm not interested in doing that right now. So I decided to back away from that pattern. I wasn't really a fan of working the stitch pattern. That's pretty much it. I didn't enjoy knitting it. plain and simple. So I stopped. So I decided that I was going to come up with, not come up, but I was going to find in my stitch pattern dictionary a stitch that would go really well with a 3x1 rib at the base, and that's kind of what I have here. So I guess you could say this is an original hat design, and you guys, I'm not a knitwear designer. I just really think that the stitch pattern looks nice with a 3x1, and I figured I would just go with it instead of trying to hunt down a hat pattern that kind of matched with this, I guess. I didn't want to, you know, rip the whole thing out. I kind of wanted to just keep going. So that's what I have going on over here. It's a really pretty seated rib. It's really nice. Once I finish this, if I feel like it's worthy of sharing, I will pop the pattern up on Ravelry, and you guys can tell me what you think. But yeah, so that's what I'm working on right here. I love it. This is really, really fast. I feel like the texture that it gives to the hat is really lovely. It's nice and squishy. It has some dimension to it. And it's really quick and easy and mindless, and that's what I need. If I'm going to cast on something new, I need it to be easy. I need it to be relatively mindless, something I can work on while I'm watching TV at the end of the day, or I can work on it while I'm sitting on the floor with my babies. But I needed something like that. I didn't need something that was going to be complicated. So yeah, this is perfect for that. So I'm really, really happy with this right now. I love where it's going. It's going to be a nice slouchy hat with a little pom-pom on top. I'm excited about the pom-pom. Love the yarn. You guys, it's pretty much the whole enchilada for me right now in terms of a new cast on at the moment. So yeah, really love that. I do want to actually add one more note about the Constellate hat pattern that kind of got my goat a little bit. And now I fully respect the process of coming up with a knitting pattern. And like I've said, I am not a knitwear designer. I don't write knitting patterns for a living, but I do a lot of knitting, and I have done a lot of knitting in the past. So I understand what you look for in a knitting pattern when you want it to be something workable, something approachable. And I don't feel like the Constellate hat kind of ticks all those boxes for me. And there's a few reasons for that. But the only one I'm going to mention here, which, like I said, gets my goat, is that the author of the pattern did not provide a base point for the knitting needle. So there's no, pretty much what was given was the tension that you need to have, the tension where you need to arrive in order to complete the hat to plan. But there was no knitting needle size given, you know, as a frame of reference. And I don't really like that. And the reason I don't like that, like, I get it. I get you have to test out your needles. You have to, you know you're going to be using this weight of yarn, so you have to just kind of test out the needle to figure out which one hits the particular gauge that's given in the pattern. But you have to have a base. You have to have a place to start from. Every knitting pattern, in my opinion, has to have a needle size that was used by the designer as a frame of reference or a base, someplace where that knitter who wants to knit that pattern can start and determine whether their gauge is too tight or too loose. You have to have some place to start. And when I was getting ready to swatch for this, and I think this is where it kind of irked me a little bit, is I was going to grab my pattern, I had the yarn I wanted to try, and I'm looking through the pattern to figure out which needle I should pull first so I can kind of have an idea where to start, and I couldn't find the needle size. And it wasn't listed on there, and it specified on there that the reason it wasn't given a needle size was because they felt like you needed to determine your gauge and kind of play around with needle sizes. And that really frustrated me because I have several needles, and yeah, I could come up with, you know, what I think might be a great place to start, but I just would like to have that guesswork taken out of it for me. Just provide me with a base, you know, of operations, like where can I start, some place to be my, you know, jumping off point so that I can move either, you know, up or down in needle size and just get started. So that kind of bugged me a little bit. I'm not sure what do you guys think about that? Can you relate to that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? But yeah, so that's what I have to say about that. I'm gonna go ahead and jump off this soapbox now. I am happy with where I am with my August hat. I like this little pattern that I have going on right now. It's an easy knit. I'm excited to get more work done on this to share with you guys. So that's where I am on that. Let me know what you guys think, and let's move on to my last work in progress. Okay, the last work in progress I want to share with you guys is my granny stripe baby blanket that I'm working on for my sister-in-law who is expecting in November. So this is going to be really special. I'm super excited about it. I haven't made a ton of progress since we spoke last, but like I said, I've been working on everything as equally as I can and everything else. So this is what I have so far. So the whole enchilada, I'll show you the whole length of colors. So here's the whole shebang, granny stripe baby blanket. Now I'm going for, and I wrote it down, yeah, I am going for a 30 by 36 baby blanket. So it's kind of a stroller blanket more than a crib blanket, and it's not quite the dimensions of a receiving blanket, because I feel like a blanket like this is one that would probably be used in like a stroller or maybe laying on the floor in the living room. So I'm not going for a really big, and I'm not going for a too small, just a 30 by 36. That's my goal. And considering that, I have 13 more inches to go lengthwise. So this direction, I have 13 more inches that I need to go to finish off the dimensions of the blanket. And then once I get my dimensions finished, I am going to be adding a crochet border to this. So I'm really, really excited about that. Okay, so last time we spoke, I think I had worked half of the seagrass that you're seeing right here. Now this is all, if you're just coming into the podcast, this is all Fiber for the People yarn, and the reason why I chose to work this in all Fiber for the People yarn is because number one, it's amazing yarn. You should definitely check it out. I'm completely biased, but I'm also being completely honest. And also because this is a gift for my sister-in-law for her daughter, and I wanted it to be 100% you know, me, in the sense of, you know, the yarn, I knit it. I didn't design the pattern, I guess, but the yarn, let's just call it that. The yarn and the crochet is me, and it's special because I dyed the yarn. So I guess I probably didn't need to explain all that. You get what I'm saying. So all of this is Fiber for the People yarn. Like I said last time, I was working on the seagrass section. Donuts with Dad came after that, and now I am working on this Lucky Strike up here. This is a limestone Lucky Strike. It's pretty, kind of like a warm gray. It almost looks like it has a tinge of like lilac to it, at least in person. Really, really pretty. So I'm loving this project. Now, like I said, I am going to be adding a border to this. Now, I wasn't too sure about doing a crochet border. I've never done a crochet border on anything. I know that in order to pull off a crochet border on a project, you typically have to do a couple rows of single crochet, which I'm happy about, because one thing about this blanket, now, if you're working a granny stripe blanket, I would really recommend sticking to one weight of yarn, unless you're going for kind of like a chunky, marled looking blanket, which could be absolutely beautiful. And I know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, I want to say, what is it? Knit collage. That's it. So unless you're going for kind of like a knit collage look where, you know, it's all very variegated in size, thick and thin, which is gorgeous, you want to really keep to one weight of yarn. And here's the reason why. Well, I mean, this is my example of why I wish I had kept to one weight of yarn. Now I'm going to just kind of like gradually pull this up, and you can see that this is all fingering weight yarn until here. So you can see this, there's like a bulge right here, and that's because this yarn, it's Lemon and Grenadine, this is a DK weight yarn. Now, I added it to the blanket, I just created a magic cake, and then I just kept crocheting, and then after I had a substantial amount of it, I realized that this is actually a DK weight yarn, so it was going to create definitely like a bulge in the fabric. And then also too, another thing, this, like I said, this is all fingering weight yarn, but this particular yarn here, this beautiful green, is on a base that, though it's fingering, it's a light fingering, so it definitely kind of lightens up in that area. Not enough to create, you know, a shape difference necessarily, but it's definitely a lighter fabric right there than like its neighboring fabric, I guess you could say, but definitely avoid adding, you know, differing weights, because you are going to get blanket bulges, which is what I've kind of started calling them. And I don't think that that's a problem, but it is, you know, it's helpful, I think, if that is the case, to add a border, because I think that that border along the outside is going to be really helpful in kind of straightening that out. I'm really hoping that I don't have that problem where when I block this section here with the larger yarn has to be blocked out wider. I'm not really sure. What do you guys think about that? Like, I don't think it's going to be a problem, but I guess I won't know until, you know, I get to that point. I do notice that when I fold the blanket, it's not 100% even. But again, I really think that a lot of your flaws, you know, in things like this can be worked out in blocking. I really believe that. So I'm kind of holding on to that and hoping that that's going to be the case. But anyway, I am going to be adding a border to this. Now, I wasn't really sure about crochet borders. I have seen like books on different crochet borders. I've looked on Pinterest at different crochet borders, and I found a really great reference on Craftsy's blog, and it is 5 simple and stunning crochet edges. I'll link to it down below, and I'll pop up a little picture of what I'm talking about here, but it is a blog post on Craftsy, and they share with you 5 really adorable crochet edges that you can use on your projects. And one of them that was included, and I have a printout here so that I can talk about it a little easier, is what you probably have seen often. It's just a shell border. It is a shell edging. It's worked after 1 row of contrasting single crochet. Not exactly 100% sure what that means, contrasting single crochet, but I think that just means that you're going to create a single crochet around the border of whatever it is that you're adding this to, and then you're creating the shell border on top of that. So I'll pop up a picture here so you can kind of see what the border looks like. I think it's really cute. It's definitely got that flouncy feminine look to it, that girly look, which is great because she's having a little girl, and I thought that would be a really cool element to add to this blanket to give it a really nice vintagey flair, but also to keep it really girly, as if, you know, just the whole thing isn't girly enough already. But I think that's going to be really pretty, so I'm excited to start that. So my goal for this blanket is to have it finished and ready for the border by, I want to say, middle of next week. That's kind of the goal I'm putting on that, because I want to get this finished. I want to get this finished before September, absolutely, which gives me time. But I just want to get this finished so it can be packaged up. I can put it away so it's finished and ready for the baby shower, and I can really start focusing on that garland that I'm going to be creating and packaging with this. Yeah, that. And then also I have a cardigan that I'm so excited to get back to working on, and I will share it with you guys once this blanket is finished. But it's just sitting there with my other works in progress taunting me, because it's that next project that I'm going to be cycling in when this one is off the hook. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So want to get this finished, want to get a border added to it. Give me some suggestions if there's other crochet borders that you think would look really pretty with this blanket. I'm open to suggestions. I love them. They really do a lot of good. So let me know. But in the meantime, I'm getting close. 13 more inches. Is that right? Yep, 13 more inches. I took note because I wanted to make sure I had the proper dimensions to share with you. But 13 more inches to go, and then I add the border, and I'm so excited. I say it all the time when I talk about this blanket. If you have yet to learn how to crochet, or if you crochet and you have yet to crochet a granny stripe, like, get a move on, because I know you probably have so many minis of yarn that you need to bust somehow. This is a really great way to do that. So highly recommend it. Very meditative, very relaxing, very cozy. I love this project so much. Oh, and before I, stop talking about this project, because I haven't talked it to death or anything, I wanted to share with you guys the yarn that I'm going to be adding after I finish this last little bit of the limestone color. So like I mentioned, this gray up here at the top is called limestone. After that, I'm going to be adding, this is another Lucky Strike Fiber for the People colorway. It's called Clay. Now, okay, so if you've been watching the podcast, you know that my squash blossom hat was knit in clay. This is also the clay base, but I remember when I created this particular Lucky Strike, I added some speckles to this particular one. So it's the clay base with some speckles, so you can actually see it just for fun to show you here. So you can see that there are some speckles in this yarn here, making it totally fun. And some of you have asked, I am in the process of recreating clay. I haven't had the opportunity to really devote the time to coming up with the formula for the color. It is coming. Clay is coming to the shop. And I really love the speckled version as well, so I might make 2. Just the basic tonal clay, and then I might make one that has speckles and see what people think about it. But clay is coming. Hang on, hold out hope for me, because it is coming. I'm very confident that I can recreate it. But anyway, moving on. So here is what's coming next. Okay, so that's clay. That's coming next. And then after clay, I am adding barn owl. This is going to be like an operation if I can get this to work here. So barn owl will come after that. There's got to be a better way. We have been here before, folks. We have been here to the acrobatic work of Taylor Earl trying to hold up a million different things in her hands. Let's try this again. So clay. Get in there, clay. Got that. And then we have barn owl on top of clay. And then on top of barn owl, I'm going to punch things up a little bit with a little bit around the way. Some fun purple. Oh, I love that colorway so much. And then on top of round the way, we're going to tone that sucker down, get a little dramatic. Pardon that. Get it together. I'm going to add some Navajo rug. Look what's happening here. It's a hot, beautiful mess. Is this even working anymore? Okay, and then on top of Navajo rug, I'm thinking I'm going to do some Craig Nadoon, bring some green into it again. Maybe, maybe not. And then if I do that, or even if I don't, I'm going to top it off with some Miss Harker and call it a day. Look, what am I even doing here? Let's get here. This, boom, boom, and boom. There they are. Oh yeah. Oh. That is what is going into my granny stripe blanket. Really excited about it. Excited to have this finished. I definitely need to get it off the hook so I can get new things on the needles. All right, you guys, that is all I have time for today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me here at the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. Don't forget to check out the Fiber for the People shop update this Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until next time, guys, for episode 31, happy knitting, happy whatever it is that you're doing, and I will see you then. Bye.